is all about love. And therefore, all the commandments of the Bible is all about love. And strangely enough, not strangely enough, strikingly enough, all humanities are seeking after is about love. And therefore, plurality of God is there to tell me that God is love in His character, in His nature, and He's a relational God. He's a communal God to begin with. He created that community sense of belonging, and therefore you and I need more than just fitting in for an hour or so. We need a place to belong. We need people to belong, and then we need to be in that relationship where each of us become an object of love and object of supreme affection to one another. Our children are to be an object of our love, and we become an object of their love. And church in a place where we create a healthy and caring community where all relationship is characterized by love, and that's what God is like, and that's what the image of God is all about. And then thirdly, first communal, and secondly, I say relational, and thirdly, what is really important is that you see God exists in triad, and because they're there to commune and have a relationship, and that nature of relationship is none other than being joyous and happy and having so much, I should say, fun with each other. In other words, there is a social nature of divinity that allow me to really be marvel at who God is. In other words, God is not just out there and discussing something just serious all the time and then frowning over us and then just being miserable. But God is someone, I want us to imagine that. God is someone who is joyous, who is fun to be with. Jesus on this earth, when he was growing up in Joseph's family, Joseph's father was a carpenter. And being a carpenter is a hard work. It's a manual labor is involved. And yet not only Jesus was doing that job, either he was making a yoke or making a shovel. Jesus was doing it not only faithfully, but Jesus was doing it so joyfully that the whole neighborhood could hear Jesus singing and joyfully humming around. And then can you imagine people who were just tired to death by the end of the day, and they would walk by Jesus' house, and then they could hear Jesus humming and singing and praising God. And they were so chilled up, and they were rejuvenated by the spirit of joy that was just exuding out of Jesus. That's what God is like. And Jesus was so fun to be with, so much so that, not only the disciples, the crowds, and then these sinners, so-called, followed Jesus, because Jesus was someone who was more than fun to be with. Communal, relational, and then social nature is very, very important. And so then whatever we pursue after God and pursue after whatever we try to pursue in life, there has to be a fun aspect. Why do you think I'm doing this? Do you think I'm miserable in doing this? I'm doing this because it's so much fun. You see, for me, fun took on a new level. More than eating food, more than meeting with my friends and everything. And this stuff is fun to me. It's enjoyable to me. It's meaningful. So fun takes on a new meaning for me. I'm socializing with you, I'm hoping. And I'm hoping that you're enjoying to dialogue with me in this way. Okay? God is communal, relational, and then social. And in that, I want to mention the reason why they exist together as they become the Tao of each other, and they have this Ao-Tao relationship, the love relationship, and all that really culminate into being in a place where they experience connection and bonding. And so then the first communal image, first collective image, and first plural image has everything to do with them being in bonding relationship. It is about bonding. It is about connection. It is about building relatedness, relation to each other in the form of bonding, where there is meaningful connection, meaningful dialogue. There's so much fun going on. Social nature is there. They're laughing together, giggling together, and then they're also crying together. They're inspiring one another. It's called bonding. We're going to continue to talk about bonding aspect, because God is the God of bonding. You and I are created for bonding, and that's what distinguishes us from any other species, because we as a human being, we're made to bond, we're made to connect, we're made to belong, we're made to have a meaningful relationship with one another, we're made to have fun and all that. And that is called bonding nature of God. Well, before I move on to the second image, I would have to mention how these bonding aspects of God, this so-called relational and communal nature of God, is reflected on a human culture. So now I'm connecting the image of God with the human culture, okay? Just hold on. The human culture, among all human culture, cultures are different, and it's hard for us to, distinguish human culture. One is this way, the other is the other way. It is hard for us to generalize it. But one thing I can say is it just kind of general sense. I hate to generalize, but if I were to kind of generalize it, I could say that there is Asian culture and then Western culture, okay? Even though cultures are all kind of intertwined now, but if I were to make a distinction, one is Asian culture, and the other kind of seemingly opposite side of Asian culture seems to be the Western culture. And what makes Asian culture distinct is that Asian culture is really woven with the idea of coming together, right? It's called collectivism. They are collectivistic. They're coming together, becoming one mass body of people belonging together. You see, my last name is there's a clan, family coming together, right? And then if my wife marrying to the clan, she become part of the family, right? And so then in that family, Asian collectivistic idea of bonding is very unique. To me, Asian way of bonding is taking bonding to an extreme, in a sense where we become so connected, so related, so much coming together like a community, but we go way out to an extreme, to a point where our bonding becomes a place of total enmeshment, if you understand what I'm talking about. So Asian way of bonding is taking bonding to an extreme. It's called enmeshment. They're so intertwined with one another. And it almost look like sticky rice. You see, the rice stuck together to a point where it loses its own sense of identity, and yet they're stuck as one, right? in that oneness, you can't distinguish one from the other. It is just one mass, whole thing together. And it is taking bonding to an extreme. And one thing interesting about that sort of bonding, it's called collectivistic bonding, right? That's collective and communal kind of bonding, where it loses one's own sense of identity. Actually, self needs to be sacrificed to be part of the bigger whole. And in that kind of bonding, there is a sense of codependency. There's a sense of safety that comes with being part of the group, and then group sort of like take care of you, right? And there's a group of people, where I am, even at Andrews, like where they're so collectivistic, they're so communal, they're so becoming one, in that if I give one sweet potato to this, if I give a couple of sweet potato to this one lady, I know for sure she's so collectivistic, she's so communal, being part of her part of culture, that she would what? Share it with everybody else. And that kind of bonding we're talking about. And sounds good, right? It could be healthy, but then when you take something that's healthy too far, you see? That collectivistic and communal kind of bonding comes from God. Asian oneness comes from God in its root. But then we're just taking it, what? Too far to a place where it is becoming unhealthy. Where there's belonging, where there's connection, where there's dependency, and yet it is what? Sacrificing one's own sense of identity and so forth. I just want to say one more point, and then we'll move on to the next point. And then that will be the next lecture. You see how deep this stuff is? I can go on and talk about it forever. So before I tire you out, and I'm going to just finish up with the first side of it, and then we're going to move on to the next one on the next segment. What I want to say is that in that kind of extreme, enmeshed kind of bonding, the problem is that while they have each other and all that, it's great, even though it can be kind of suffocating to a point. But what if one person, the system you depend on, collapse? You see? Then it's going to impact everybody else who belongs to it. Then you will have a hard time finding the way out, or finding yourself to survive, and finding your own sense of identity. You see, it happened to my own family, my mother's family. And my mother was someone who was keeping my mother's side of the family together after her father died. Her mother was dependent on her and her sister, and her except her sister. Two brothers were so connected with her in a way that they were emotionally dependent on her. And she has, two younger brothers. Wonderful people, very giving, very caring. But the sad part of our story, our family story, is that ever since my mom died at the age of 41, can you imagine? And my grandmother was traumatized. Of course, everyone would be traumatized. The point I'm trying to make is that her younger brother was traumatized. And another younger brother was also traumatized. And then one younger brother, died so early as well, without being able to cope with the loss of his sister, whom he was so dependent upon, because they were being so enmeshed in the name of bonding. And so when you look at Asian culture from a image of God perspective, yes, it came from the image of God. It came from the value that God instilled to us, and yet we have taken it too far and making it unhealthy. And therefore, there's a work to do for us to make it balanced and make it healthy. You see? The final point I want to make about culture and the image of God is that while human culture is incomplete, right, and unhealthy, could be unhealthy, but there's a healthy side of it. If there is, it comes from the image of God. And then I would like to say this, that how do we reconcile between the two? Well, culture and the image of God. How do we deal with cultural conflicts, which I will speak more later on. But one thing I want to point out here is that we're not here, me coming from Asian culture, grew up in Asian culture, and being a Christian, and now I'm promoting the image of God, right, in connection to human culture. I cannot, and also it is not healthy for me to abandon my Asian culture, thinking that it is all unhealthy and unbalanced. There is an unbalanced aspect, and there is an unbalanced way of relating. There is an unhealthy way of bonding and all that. But human culture, yes, it is incomplete and unhealthy aspects of it, and yet I cannot, and I should not abandon everything, because that is just human culture is embedded within me. Well, we're not here to discard or go against or abandon. Well, as long as it is not totally unbiblical, but we are here to, go beyond. Yes, without unnecessarily going against. I know it creates a deep thoughts in your heart. We're going to talk more about that. Isn't that amazing that God's first image, the togetherness, the relatedness, the relationship aspect, the communal aspect, and then the social aspects, and then the collectivistic aspect, which is very close to Asian culture in a way, right, as it is extended to human culture, but it is none other than the bonding nature of God, bonding character of God. God is the God who builds connection, relation, and belongingness. And therefore, you and I are created as people needing to be nourished and to be nurtured and to be cultivated in a place where you can connect with the other in a way that is ever getting deeper. And that's what makes humanity flourish and grow. And that's what the image of God is all about. Isn't that beautiful? God is the God of bonding. Therefore, you and I, ongoingly, we have so much to learn for. And I want to tell you one more thing about bonding, is that all human dysfunctions stemming from not knowing or lack of or skewed or unhealthy sense of bonding that we experience in our lives. And lack of bonding or unhealthy kinds of bonding or false kind of bonding are the root cause of all human dysfunction that I experience or I witness in the lives of people. In that sense, God of bonding is there to heal us and to restore what it means to be connected. Okay? And thank you for joining, and I hope it was a fascinating dialogue together about God, about humanity. We'll move on to the next segment, which is the other side of bonding. You see, which really balance out the other. And what seemingly conflictual or seemingly different is there to complement, is there to complete the whole picture in an amazing, amazing way. So we'll talk about that.